Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished professional from the UK, but talking to us today from France, Chelle Verite. Chelle, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here and spend time with you today.
Chelle is the founder of Bombchelled. She's a positive disruptor and empowerment coach, and she's an author. And all of you know I'm partial to authors. She's an author of a book titled Because You Matter. So, Chelle, let's start with Bombchelled. Tell me about this venture and your motivation to start it.
Oh, well, okay. As you've noticed, my name is Chelle, but my name wasn't always Chelle Verite. That changed about 6 years ago. And my background's in corporate psychology. And really, it's about helping people be authentically true to themselves. That's my whole ethos in life.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a live wire, really. So I'm really lively. And the way that I work with corporate psychology and businesses and customers and people is to bring them out of their shell, literally. So it's about bombshelling people into positive action. So I thought, hey, let's use the name and change it and kind of, brighten things up a little. So that's exactly what the brand is about. So it's about thinking about your authenticity, thinking about your work, but also thinking about what you are as a person as well. So it's really important.
Wonderful. How wonderful. So, when I was reading about you, you say that the process you follow is a positive disruptor and empowerment coach. Help me understand this with an example.
Well, okay. So positive disruption. Well, when I was younger, I was always this whirlwind of energy. And I think, when you're around people and you want to make a difference, which is something that's really important to me, it kind of got negatively construed. So I'm very much about, we're all different. We all bring something new to the party. And this is about how do we bring our own self to the world in a way that makes us feel good. And positive disruption to me is exactly that. It's disrupting your mind. It's disrupting how you operate, but also in a positive way. So that's why positive disruption came into my world. And it was actually a terminology that was introduced to me when I was doing the TEDx talk in Doncaster. So that was amazing. But it very much encapsulated the positive side of disruption in my world, because we're all different. So that's positive disruption. And I really want people to embrace that and positively cherish what they have. So that's why positive disruption is so important. As for the empowerment coach, why not? I mean, isn't it amazing? We often feel a little bit, how do we say, downtrodden with life. And it's very much about how do we get out in the morning? How do we make sure that whatever we're doing, we're empowering ourselves and empowering the world that we're in? So for me, empowerment coaching is much more than life coaching. It's much more than business coaching. It's much more than corporate. It's about you and about how you want to empower yourselves in terms of your willpower, but I call it I will power.
Well said, well said. But, for my viewers and listeners, give me an example of where you did some positive disruption and how you empowered some people you were coaching.
Yeah, sure, of course. So I spend quite a lot of my time in big corporates, like we've got Channel 4, a film company here, TV company, also Royal College of Art. So people who are involved in either front-facing jobs or people who are helping other people be tremendous. So for me, positive disruption, when you're, say, teaching, so if you take the Royal College of Art, very creative, but also struggling with, if we think about the pandemic, we think about this virtual box that we're living in at the moment. What does that actually feel like when you're teaching? So I think it's about making sure that people feel empowered enough to be able to settle into what they need to settle into and be themselves when they're teaching. So that to me is about your mindset, about understanding how do you process that information? What do you need to do to be that person that you can come across in a way that you'll inspire others to achieve? Because it's very difficult. If you think about the Royal College of Art, I mean, how do you inspire people to be creative in a box? So again, it's about thinking and looking at things differently. And a lot of my time, certainly in lockdown, was with teaching people, was with staff of looking after either youngsters or people who are learning. So it's about making sure that that person who's teaching and being available is in the right mindset. So that's what positive disruption's all about. So it might be learning about how to manage your energy. It might be about how do we focus your mindset? How do we get rid of that critical mind? That imposter syndrome, we all have it. We think, oh, I'm not worthy. So what does that look like? How do we get rid of those self-doubts? So it's very much about an internal experience that people have, and how do we make sure that people feel good, because we're human beings after all. We should feel good. Yeah,
absolutely. And Chelle, given great corporate record, career education in corporate psychology, what made you select coaching as a profession?
Oh, well, wow. When I started, so I graduated in psychology in 1999, and I was one of the only people to get a job in corporate psychology. So I was really lucky to graduate straight into it. And I kind of fell into training and facilitation. It was either, do you want to do psychometrics and maths, or would you like to do people? And I was like, let me train some people, which was amazing for me. And about 6 years on from that, it was my own personal discovery. So I'm adopted. I kind of wanted to find out more about me, and there was a lot of questions that were going on in my life, and where do I take my career? What do I do? And at that point, it was about 2006. So only, how can I say this? Counseling was available, which was, you tell your story, but my premise is, you're not broken, so let's not fix you. Right. So I really didn't want to go through all of my story and kind of crash who I was. I wanted to understand, where do I go from now? In 2006, coaching was coming over from America, and I was like, what is this? This is great. It's goal focused. You are resourceful, whole as you are. It's about future focused, and you could achieve anything. So I applied, and I thought, actually, this is great. I did a 6-month International Coaching Federation course. Hard work, because you go through the coaching cycle yourself. And that was one of the reasons why coaching really appealed to me, because I genuinely believe that people aren't broken. They don't need fixing. This is about, who are you, what are you aspiring to, and how do you get there? And that most wonderful magic that happens when you are coaching. So that's kind of how I fell into it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing the story.
That's all right.
My next question to you is, how has your background supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
Wow. Okay, where do I start? Okay. So I grew up as the only coloured face, or brown face in the Shetland Isles. So if you've ever been to the Shetland Isles, you probably haven't. It's miles away from the UK mainland. It's 263 miles away, closer to Norway. So for me, it was very much about never feeling like I fitted in, because I didn't understand my color. I didn't have role models to aspire to. So I think that really built up my resilience and understanding for what it feels like to be alone, but also what it feels like to have that tenacity to achieve what you believe in yourself, and that almost loss of identity, but then finding yourself as well. So I think that that whole reality check on who you are, how you exist, all of those questions, what's the meaning of life? We joke about it and say it's 42, but actually what is that meaning of life? And for me, it was about bringing that quality and understanding to other people, to say, I celebrate the fact you've gotten up today. I know that everybody struggles, to be your authentic self. You have to go on a real journey of self-discovery. You have to understand what that is. You have to feel pain to feel that gain as well. And that's quite an earth-shattering experience, if you make yourself that vulnerable. Correct. So for me, it's about understanding that the show that people put on, like the show I've got today, I've been running around trying to find a place in the house in France, going, what's going to look really nice, and is it okay? And we all worry about these sorts of things, but actually, we all have that story as well, and it's about being present in that moment. So actually standing still. Because a lot of us spend time either in that, what I call the unchangeable past. You can't change the past that's happened, and we worry about it, we catastrophize about it, or we think about the future and we think about, well, what if? And we spend time in different places, when in actual fact we should spend time here. So for me, it's very much that background of understanding sometimes we don't fit in, we have to create our own niche, we have to have our own understanding, and that's hard. And I'm a very empathetic personality. I never really understood what that meant. And it as you learn empathy or experience it, if you've ever been in that place, you take on everybody else's emotions and energy, which is very draining for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but also means you can sit next to a person in the bus and kind of think, God, I know what you're feeling right now. It's the strangest experience.
Yes.
So to have all of that background and understanding, I think it makes you really humble. And it makes you really fully appreciate the fact that whoever you're talking to, they have a real story, and they deserve to feel good. And I keep coming back to that analogy, but as human beings, we kind of go to the negatives, don't we? So actually, why not just land with who you are? And that's really the gift. That's the gift that I have.
Fascinating, fascinating. And given your background, given what you just told me about where you grew up, how have you been shaped by the people and your perspectives? And what kind of perspectives do you bring to your coaching?
Wow. Okay. Where do I start with this one? Well, my adoptive parents are, my dad's Jewish, but he's actually Jewish but doesn't follow the faith. He married outside of the faith. My mum is agnostic. And that alone is a bit of a challenge. So I think really, and I'm Caribbean as well. So, I'm absolutely identify with Scotland. So I'm incredibly proud to be Scottish. So I understand about identity. I understand about how that sits with you. But I also understand the quandary of not actually understanding who you are and creating that as well. So I think, having that whole kind of mixture in the pot has really helped develop my style as a coach. I'm incredibly hard work.
Yes.
So, very bouncy.
Yeah.
But when you're coaching with me, it's about who are you? What do you need? What do you actually want? And I always ask people, what is it that you want? And most people don't know. You sit with that and you kind of go, I don't know. I know what I don't want. I don't want spaghetti bolognese. I don't want this to happen. I don't want that to happen. But actually, when you ask people truthfully, what do you want in your world for you? That's a really difficult question. I had one coaching client who came up to me. It took him 12 weeks to actually decide, I don't know what I want, Chelle. I'm going to have to go away and have a think about it. And I celebrate that. I celebrate when people spend time with themselves and what that looks like. So really, it's about their journey. It's about, how can I help with the tools that I've created? And my gift is making psychological concepts simplistic and fun and vibrant and memorable, like crazy characters like Devastating Dave and Meltdown Mary, so that I've got lots of organizations drawing like Mickey Mouse stuff for feeding back to self and things. And as much as it's fun and creative, it's about giving them a toolkit that actually works. And that's where my pride comes in. It's about not only finding out where they want to go, but equipping them, because why not? Why would we not do that? So,
Very interesting. My next question to you is that, the UK is a very multicultural society now, right? And based on all my conversations with so many different people, culture has an impact on the coaching relationship that you build with your client.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your perspective on how does culture impact coaching?
So that's a really interesting one. I think from the UK's perspective, we are this melting pot of difference. And, you can go from you can travel for 20 minutes and hear different accents, different things. And even my husband, so I married a Yorkshireman. I'm Scottish. Yorkshiremen always say Yorkshire's the best, the best country in the world. And I kind of go, no, actually, you'll find Scotland is. So and we use different types of language. So I'll give you an example. He uses the words not bad. So if something's not bad to him, it means it's excellent. And I remember cooking him this fabulous meal, and he said, God, that's not bad. And I thought the enthusiasm's there, but the language isn't. And so there's that incongruence sometimes. And he gladly explained to me and said, actually, not bad means it's fabulous. And he said, well, why didn't you just say it was fabulous? So I think what we need to be mindful of, certainly in the UK, is about we use different languages. So in Scotland, we're quite an enthusiastic bunch of people. We'll communicate loudly, or as I say, the prime of Mistine Brodie, if it's Edinburgh way, or if it's Glaswegian, it's rougher, but it's more forthright. So I think it's understanding and listening out and being really empathetic to what's your language, what's your culture, you know, what is it that you actually need, what works for you. And in coaching, that's a very delicate state to be in. So if you think about, you know, listening to someone's language, I might say something's brilliant and amazing. The other person might say, well, they might be a little bit more humble, or they might have different mannerisms, and it's really just kind of morphing yourself into that person's requirements. And, you know, it doesn't, for me, you know, color creed, yes, of course, we have to bear in mind, you know, certainly when you're dealing with people of color. So I have been, at the moment, I've been working with allied health professionals, particularly in the BAME Society. You know, I'm about to do a conference with them in London at the end, you know, in a few weeks. And there's an unspoken understanding that when you're with people of an ethnic minority, they have different challenges that are often unspoken. So really, you have to be quite astute to understanding, firstly, what's a cultural difference, what's potentially, you know, the other things going. It's like the layers of a cake, so to speak, you know, the ingredients that you put in. Some of the ingredients are the same, but actually, how does it mix together? You're going to create something different. And I think it's having that real awareness and empathy with them to understand often what's unspoken. So you have to listen out very carefully as to, well, you're saying that's quite good, but actually, what do you mean by that? You know, usually there's a catch point where people are going, well, it's not really very good at all, actually. This is the reality. And when you're coaching, it's about building that trust, that understanding, that empathy, that confidentiality, and making sure that people are in a safe space. You know, and for me, yes, there are differences. So I think you mentioned earlier on, one of the questions was about Japan, and I did a lot of research. I've only ever worked with one company that was based in London, actually, and it was an American, it was a bank, American and Japanese, and I had to train senior managers in that position, and it was fascinating. Like, literally, the Japanese came in and they were sitting all in their authoritative roles and hierarchy. The US people came in and they sat anywhere they wanted. You know, it was almost like stereotypical, very quiet and humble and very brash. So I think when you're in a group situation, certainly coaching, you have to be very astute as to what's going on and not make huge faux pas. And if you do, always apologize, you know.
Yeah, well said. Well, a great response. So, Chelle, let me move to your book now. The book is, I see it, you got it behind you.
I do, and I have one here. This is actually, I wanted, yeah.
I'm just going to compliment you that the color of your dress and the color of your book and the color of your curtains are all the same.
Thank you. I'm very purple and green and orange orientated, and the next books that come out, they'll be either pink, green, orange, or bright blue. I think this is the colors. But this is the copy. I wanted to bring this one. This is one that's not actually been touched yet. But this is the copy that I'm actually working through myself.
Okay.
Because as an author, you've written many books, but you go through this process of almost like giving birth to the book. You know, I call it my book baby. And it's only now, I launched this book in April, that I've actually been able to sit down and actually work through the exercises myself. So I've filled in many of the different things that are in the book already, and been really honest about it as well. So I've gone on that own personal journey, and it's a hard book, you know. Maybe my next book I'll lighten it up a little.
Okay.
It's really challenging.
Tell me a little bit about the book, and what was your motivation to write it?
Okay, so my book, I used to love bookstores. So growing up in an island, you know, there's not very many shops, but when you come into the mainland in the UK, you get to go into shops. And one of the most amazing places I loved to go to as a child was Waterstones, and Borders books as well before they disappeared. But Waterstones was their favorite bookstore, and I used to walk in and just think, wow, like this is amazing, and get lost. But one of the things that I noticed was the pressure on ourselves to actually choose books that we think we ought to read. So we ought to read them, the classics, you know, the things that look pretty in bookshelves. But and the drawback of that is, firstly, they never get read. Secondly, they don't bring you any joy. And thirdly, they don't tell you anything that you actually need to know.
Right.
And one of the other things I noticed about personal development books was they have this fabulous story about the person going through this huge transformation. I lost everything. It was a disaster. But they never actually tell you how to do it.
Correct.
They kind of go, this is my story, you can do that too. And I read lots and lots of books, and I kind of went, that's great, you're telling me stuff, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not interacting with the book. I'm not learning anything. I can't walk away with a toolkit. I actually sometimes feel worse than when I started the book. And I kind of get 3/4 of the way through and go, I've given up now, because I know it's going to be a happy ending for you, but actually all you've done is sent me spiraling into despair.
Correct.
So this book was really different for me. It took me 3.5 years to write it. It's my own personal story in terms of, and the analogy, because you matter, is something that I hold so close to my heart and offer in all of my coaching and everything. It's about that whole authenticity, and you genuinely do matter. But I've written it in a way, it's 21 life lessons on everything. So you've got your critical mind in there, you've got dissolving worries, you've got acceptance, you've got everything that you could possibly about gifting, emotional, you're like stopping emotional turbulence in your life, actually, creating that glow, giving back to yourself. I call that being self-with rather than selfless or selfish. And it's my own story as well, like threaded through it. And some of the chapters are incredibly powerful in terms of the stories behind it. It's about adoption, about not fitting in, about my story. But there's so many levels to the book. It's like, you can take my story and listen to the story. You can take my story and use your story and interject your own experiences in it. And then also coupled with that, you have activities that you need to do. So they'll ask you really hard questions. So like, this is step 2, what do you actually want? Ironically, that's on page 242.
Yep.
If you want to take the leap on something, what do you need to start with? What's blocking you? What's stopping you? So it's like having me for £15. You can have me rather than spending a fortune. And I want it to go worldwide. Genuinely, it's already met Niagara Falls. It's gone to Australia, which is awesome. But for me, it wasn't about making money. You never make any money writing books.
Correct.
unless you're J.K. Rowling, which cost me a fortune to get the book out. But I really just wanted everybody to have a toolkit you can dip in and out and understand that you're not alone, that, you can empower yourself because you matter,
Well said. I've got time for one more question. And
Sure.
this is for the many people who will listen to our conversation. And I'm going to encourage all of them to go and check out your book, Because You Matter, on Amazon. I'll go and check it out, of course. But my question to you, Chelle, is, given your amazing background and the amount of people you have worked with, what would your advice be to young individuals who are starting off on their life?
Right, I have this phrase, which is, life is for enjoying, not enduring. And it's so simple. So, if you are setting out and you're doing things, listen wisely. And make sure that you ask as many questions as you possibly can. And if you're enjoying it, do more. If you're enduring it, do less. And regardless, even when you don't even feel like you can do something, remember, regardless of how it feels, you've absolutely got this. So that's what I would say. It's all about, being real, showing up and being seen for who you are. That's the most important thing.
Well said. So, and on that note, Chelle, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about
it's a pleasure.
Bombchelled and all the amazing work you're doing with so many different teams with large organizations. Thank you for talking to me about your book, Because You Matter. And thank you for sharing some very, very personal details about yourself. Thank you again.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.